friends and say, these are priorities that would be helpful to the United States and to people abroad. On the second issue that you asked about, remind me of the exact issue?
Muslims
the public discourse. Yeah, here's the issue there. First of all, Muslims are still learning how to articulate our message when it comes to TV, radio, and print. Some are doing an excellent job, some are not doing a great job. The problem that we have is two things. First, know-how on how to approach the media, how to hold a press conference, how to speak on a cable television program, how to speak on a radio program. We need to learn the skill sets of doing that. Some of us don't know exactly how to do that, and we need to be trained. And it's just basic media training. The other problem that we're having, and we saw this in the controversy of the center in New York City, is that many of our Muslim voices are not the best voices to make that case first. So that's where we need to have a little conversation amongst ourselves and kind of a little straight talk, as we say, where just because you're an executive director or a president of an organization doesn't mean you necessarily should be the person in front of the camera. And this is a problem I've been having with a lot of Muslim organizations, nationally and in Washington, D.C., that we need to think about the messenger for the message just as much as we do about the message. And this involves, as we all know, problems of ego and control and things like that. So that's a challenge. My suggestion is that all organizations, whether it's MPAC or CAIR or ISNA or other organizations, that when given a platform to be on a national television program or to be on a radio program or to write an op-ed for a newspaper or for a journal, to give those responsibilities and that responsibility, because it's an important responsibility to articulate a coherent message on behalf of the Muslim American community to somebody who speaks English, speaks in American English, and can do it in a very concise and clear manner. So that the average American who's driving to work in the morning, who's flipping around on their TV and watching different shows, and see this Muslim, says, hey, that message makes sense to me. I can identify with that person. And right now, and I see this with Imam Raouf, for example, it was a classic example of misinformation about Islam meeting an inadequate response. An inadequate response that in many cases, each time Imam Raouf or Daisy Khan would speak on television about the project in Lower Manhattan, it would cause more misinformation and more misunderstanding. Not through any intentional fault of their own, of course, but because what they might say might be misinterpreted. Let me give you an example. Imam Raouf was named the project the Cordoba Initiative. Now, everybody, all of us Muslims, especially Muslims living in the West, we have been inculcated from a very early stage that Cordoba was this unique, utopian time where Muslims were in Spain and Jews and Christians were living in harmony, and there was a time of art and science and Renaissance, and that's all true. I'm not arguing with that. But for many non-Muslims, particularly non-Muslims who have been misinformed by these unfortunate individuals who are out there pushing the anti-Muslim agenda, Cordoba was a time of Islamic domination over Christians and Jews in Spain, when Muslims conquered Spain and ruled over Spain. And so when they hear Cordoba, they say, see, we told you, these Muslims, this is triumphalism. Newt Gingrich was saying that. This is triumphalism. First day, because Muslims, they've already said Muslims are not Americans, so Muslims, first day attacked us on 9/11, and now they want to dance on the graves of our fellow Americans who were killed, and they have the audacity to call it the Cordoba Initiative. So this was a clear example of Imam Raouf living in Lower Manhattan for over 30 years as an American, but more importantly as an American New Yorker, and an intellectual, was using language and terminology that many in middle America, Joe Sixpack, hear a completely different message. That even as well-informed and well-intended as they were, if they had talked to people, they would realize that this message could be construed in a very hostile manner without them meaning to. And that's not even to get into the issues that we have spokespeople whose we can't understand what they're saying, their accents, things like that. Which again, it's not a question of fairness, but you want to find the best spokesperson, right? When the Prophet ﷺ sent the early Sahaba, the small migration of followers, to Abyssinia, because the Muslims were being persecuted in Mecca, he appointed a leader, Ja'far. Ja'far was not the oldest, and not the youngest, not the smartest, but he was appointed because he was the most eloquent. So when the Meccans sent the two tribal leaders to come and extradite, it was basically, lawyers were recognizing an early extradition request. They said these people are traitors, they have insulted our idols, we want them back, and the king was adjudicating the issue. He asked for Ja'far to make a statement to defend himself, and Ja'far, because the Prophet ﷺ appointed him because of his ability to speak and to articulate a message, made the case on behalf of those early Muslims. So we have the examples even from the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and we need to only really learn from those early examples. And unfortunately, a lot of Muslim organizations right now don't do that. They think just because they get a call from C-SPAN, Washington Journal program, to have a spokesperson come, that they have to put the president of the organization there. Sometimes they do a good job, and they don't do a good job. And I would argue that we have now a wonderful bench of young Muslim people, locally and nationally, who could articulate that message for Americans to hear, because that's the audience. That's the audience. When we're debating these anti-Muslim forces, I have to remind people and myself that the issue is not to convince the anti-Muslim person to suddenly become pro-Muslim. That's in Allah's hands. Hopefully we will. But the real target audience is the audience that is listening to the debate. I have never seen a presidential debate or a congressional debate where the candidate after the debate goes across and says, you know what, you're right, I'm going to throw in, stop my campaign and join you. It doesn't happen. You're trying to convince the audience that's kind of look between these two candidates and say, who do I like most, who makes the most sense? Likewise, right now we're in a national debate. The national debate is Islam a threat? Can Muslims be loyal to the country? Can they indeed be Americans? And that, the vast majority of Americans are still making up their mind. So we have to be able to make that message clear and concise, speaking in the proper English and in examples that Americans understand.
You know, the conference was where we had the debate. If that something like that could be arranged by the Muslims, the group you're talking about, all these 50, 70 staffers, when people can articulate the message of Islam to the general.
We did that actually.
If we could do that,
we did that actually. I'll give you an example. Right when this stuff was going on about New York, Muslim staffers on Capitol Hill on a Friday after Jummah, just as all of us talk after Jummah, we said we have to do something. So we said, okay, let's have an event, a press event on Capitol Hill where we'll talk about these issues: Sharia, mosque in Lower Manhattan, etc. So we invited different leaders. We had Salam al-Mariati from MPAC. We had Jim Zogby from AAI. And we had Professor Aziz al-Hibri, who is a professor at University of Richmond, not only a specialist in Sharia, but also an American lawyer. And she can address the issues about women in Islam. So we had these three panels, and I was a moderator. And C-SPAN covered it live. We had a packed audience. They showed it several times on C-SPAN. C-SPAN radio had it live on the radio. They showed it over the weekend. Muslim organizations came complaining to me. Several Muslim organizations came complaining to me, saying, why didn't you invite us? And I said to them, this is not about Muslim organizations. This is the problem that we have. I said, this is not about one organization being there. And one person even said, you invited a non-Muslim to come, and not Jim Zogby because he's Catholic. I said, yeah. You know why? Because he does a better job than a lot of Muslims in articulating who Muslims are. So I said, we have to use hikmah, we have to use some wisdom, so that people who can, again, Aziz al-Hibri is a lawyer, she can talk about Sharia issues. So sometimes we need to mature a little bit as a community. But that was an example where some of our organizations think very parochially and think, well, we have to be there at the seat of the table, or I need to have our executive director there, or our president needs to be there. And we need to get beyond that. We need to decide who is the most articulate person. Maybe it might be a brother, it might be a sister, it might be a younger person, it might be an older person. We need to make the decision and push them forward to be the spokesperson.
Okay, thank you. We're going to have to take a break and we'll have lunch now. Let's do this quickly, please, because we do have Rashida Delayed here as well, and we want to get the most out of all our speakers. So, lunch is in the back. It's pizza and drinks, and let's just take 20 minutes, really, only 20 minutes. Let's and you can talk to obviously say, time to take on me a little bit too. So, but our other guest is here, Rashida Delayed. No, no, that's fine. Okay.
I'm using you as my drug.
He's using you as his.
I got it.
Behind the back.
He's here prepared.
No, I just took some notes.
No, it's frustrating. First class is definitely frustrating. I don't know.